Deep northern Colorado roots. For over 120 years, each generation of Foothills has joined their voices to affirm the same words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. People are often surprised that a church with such a progressive outlook and commitment to justice has such a long history in the community. Although our name has changed a few times over the last century, Foothills has been a vital part of our northern Colorado community since its founding, and we are all indebted to our ancestors who kept the flame alive for us. Ancestors like Reverend Anna James Norris, who for 5 years traveled on horseback and by train between Fort Collins and Longmont in efforts to establish Unitarian societies in each community. A newspaper at the time described her as a talented lady and a preacher of more than unusual power, and as one who, quote, does in sober common sense and appeals to her bearers to strive after nobler, better things in this life. Reverend Norris was a member of the Iowa Sisterhood, a group of 21 women who worked to bring the concepts of liberal religion to the Plains and Western states.
Embracing theological diversity. The founding members wrote their aspirations for their new community into the church charter of 1898. Despite the pioneering spirit of the time, residents of small Western communities were generally not open to the ideas of liberal religions. Unitarianism was a suspect faith in the late 1800s. Jesus, for most Unitarians, was the model for the perfect human life, not the divine Son of God. This led to scorn and at times boycotting by our more orthodox neighbors. Over the decades, our church evolved from being a primarily Christian-centered community to one that is now made up of people across the theological spectrum. We strive to stay true to the core practice of our faith, that revelation and truth continue to be revealed.
A commitment to justice and civic engagement. In the 1940s, the new minister, Reverend Harold Wright, was instrumental in the formation of the Ministerial Alliance that worked tirelessly to bring about justice for the Hispanic community, many of whom had lived in the area longer than the white settlers. Just working conditions and housing, education for the children of day laborers, and the removal of "No Mexican, No Dogs" signs on College Avenue were just some of the work they did. Foothills was caught up in the societal transformation of the 1960s and 70s as feminism, the anti-Vietnam War movement, and counterculture challenged the congregation to navigate differing perspectives and yet remain in community together. In the 1980s and 90s, as rhetoric against gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and queer people rose to a fervor, and Colorado was branded the hate state, Foothills fought against Amendment 2 that aided to enshrine LGBTQ people as second-class citizens in the state. Foothills became a proud, welcoming congregation committed to celebrating gender and sexual diversity.
Doggedly persistent to survive. Throughout our history, there have been many moments of real struggle where the church was hanging on by a thread. There were years where the church was lay-led, not being able to afford a minister, taking on the role as a community. In 1935, amid the crushing financial realities of the Depression and the death of their minister, the church held a vote to decide if they should continue to exist. By a single vote, the decision was made that a liberal presence was a worthy endeavor to continue. There exists a persistent thread of dedicated commitment to this church. For so many of us, there is no other church that can offer the theological acceptance and commitment to the common good that we find in Unitarian Universalism. So even in the hard times, there is a commitment to seeing it through. This persistence has paid off as the church has grown in impact over the years, symbolized by times when it has outgrown its space on a few occasions, moving from its old stone building in Old Town to its current location on Drake.
The G word. For all of our history, we have had a complicated relationship to the G word, as in growth. Welcoming people in and keeping our circle open for all who come seeking our community has always been core to who we are. Stories from our early days remind us that without growth, we risk our very existence. Still, those who found Foothills in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s cherish the tight-knit small community through community events like the Medieval Fair, the Rummage Sale, friendship circles like the Rowdy Moms, and the friendships formed at Buckhorn Family Retreat. There was a sense that everyone knew everyone else. All of this was enhanced by the long-term ministry of Reverend Walter Royal Jones in the 70s and 80s. As Fort Collins grew, and the church programs in music and religious education developed in the 90s and early 2000s with the strong worship and pastoral presence of Reverend Mark Salkin, many new families and individuals were attracted to that same sense of community and progressive values that had been at Foothills' heart for generations. In these years, the small, tight-knit community grew until, by about 2010, it had become a larger UU congregation of nearly 600 members. Foothills leadership knew that even though it would mean they'd need to let go of some of the small community feel that they valued, the bigger value of Unitarian Universalism meant that they needed to change and adapt to welcome and embrace their growing membership fully. They began a process of shifting how they ran the congregation, including beginning the process of adding a second minister and shifting how the congregation thought about giving, tackling the long-standing culture of scarcity, and embracing a culture of abundance. This work culminated in the years 2016 through 18 when the church adopted a new mission statement and a bold vision for the future centered in partnership with the work of courageous love. This organizational focus put our ambivalence to growth officially in the past, as instead we make growth a clear part of our mission as we seek to grow both in ourselves as a part of ongoing spiritual development and in the reach and impact of our ministries across northern Colorado and beyond.